Hello, welcome to the first LAMS meeting of 2020. I'm unable to actually be in the room with you today as I am technically on an outdoor ed camp with my students, even though I'm about 2 doors down the grade 4 corridor. But I thought this would be a good opportunity to record a video and do some asynchronous learning. So as we go through this, I'm going to ask you to pause and have discussions with your partners or people in your grade level if you've come as a team, or just people on your table. You don't have to stick to the time too strongly. Obviously, it's just kind of a guidance as we go. Okay, so the intended outcomes for this session is to, first of all, reflect on the units in terms of their ability to scaffold conceptual understanding. We've done a whole bunch of work on that already, so most of you should be fairly strong on that, fairly confident on that. But it's always nice to kind of cast an eye over it, and I'm sure we all have one or two units that we think could be improved in that area, so it's nice to reflect on that and have a look. Then we're going to assign either the research or scientific process to each of our units. And hopefully this will allow the students to realize that we do some science in the primary school. Ben's video on Friday, it became apparent that there's more than one student that is unaware that we do any science in the primary school. Of course, we do science, but just labeling it and articulating it, I think, will probably help that perception a little bit. So we're going to have a look at that. And then we're going to use our learning context to identify opportunities for experiential learning, interdisciplinary connections, and transfer projects. So I'll explain a bit more about that as we go. Okay, so we're going to return, when we reflect on our units in terms of their ability to scaffold conceptual understanding, we're going to return to this diagram, which we've all seen before from Lynn Erickson, and then there's the structure of process down here from Lois Lanning. But we're going to focus in on the structure of knowledge from Lynn Erickson here. We've spent a lot of time over the last year or two focusing on generalizations and concepts. And what I'd like us to do now is kind of have a think about this bottom layer, this knowledge base, if you will. So we're going to have a focus in on here and think about how our units build that factual understanding and knowledge and have a clear, it says topic here, but we're kind of going to think about it in terms of context, a clear context on which to build those conceptual understandings and generalizations. Okay, so if you're kind of a bit unclear of what that might look like at different grade levels, if you click here, there's a whole bunch of other examples. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to pause the video now. Talk with the person that's in your grade team, or if not your grade team, someone who's on your table, and have a think about your units and the extent to which we have that knowledge base being built, and any units that perhaps don't have such a clear knowledge foundation and that you think you could work on, and we can work through and have coaching conversations about in the future. So if you spend about 15 minutes on that, if you pause the video now, and then click through on the slide deck. Okay, we're back. So context, right. We're having a look here, and when we think about that knowledge base, strong knowledge is built in a strong context, okay? And so why is that context so important? We talk a lot about concepts and generalizations, but without that strong knowledge base and a clear context, it can often be very, very abstract for the learner and for the teacher as well. And so we're going to focus a little bit on context today. And why is this so important? Well, it allows us to build that strong, consistent knowledge base, which we've just talked about. It enables us to build and share high-quality resources. Of course, if we're all starting units with strong knowledge base and rooted in something such as experiences like going out around the school to some of the nature areas, and we build our learning around those contexts, we can also develop some really high-quality resources and experiences and plans around that. It allows for spiral and repetition of concepts and CUs, but not repetition of the content and resources. Okay, so we might have very similar CUs, grade on grade, and what separates them is that context. And that's actually allowing children to transfer their learning year on year as well. So build on a conceptual understanding rather than repeating the knowledge that built that conceptual understanding. It gives direction and clarity on which to build the scientific and research skills once again, so if we have the scientific process and we teach the scientific process over and over again, or the research process over and over again, because they are K to 5 CUs, the children are going to be rather bored. So by changing the context, what we're doing is allowing for the transfer of skills, but also keeping it fresh and keeping it interesting for the children. It provides a foundation on which to build interdisciplinary learning without making overly abstract interdisciplinary learning links, such as the balance example given by Carla on Friday. So on Friday, Carla used the idea of balance being done across disciplines and being used just as balance as a big abstract idea, making tenuous links across disciplines. If we have a shared context, such as, say, like a particular nature space around the school or a particular time and place, then that allows for that cross-curricular learning and that interdisciplinary learning to be to have a bit more foundation to it and not be this sort of tenuous and overly abstract ideas such as balance. And it allows for strong reference points when transferring understanding and giving students agency in their learning. Okay, so this is kind of where we look at building competency. If we're taking children through guided and structured inquiry, before we let them go off and transfer their understandings on independent inquiry, they're much more likely to be successful in their learning and in their transfer. Okay, so we're kind of just building their capacity, modeling how to inquire, modeling how to carry out a scientific investigation, for example, before we let them explore their own areas of learning. Okay, and so the strong context basically allows for these three areas of our learning program. Right, so with this in mind, what I'd like you to do in your grade teams, if you've come as a team, is to have a think about our units and ask yourself questions about each of the units. So for example, we have a unit title. So in this category, I'm going to ask myself about the unit title. And I'm going to ask myself, is the unit title overly vague? Is it overly specific? Is there any way that I could improve it? And here I've just asked myself a question. We're doing location unit at the moment in unit study, and I'm thinking that location, and I had this conversation with Terry, we're thinking location might be a little bit too abstract, and maybe we can tighten up the context a little bit and bring it into be a bit more focused on what we're actually studying here. So that's just a question we're asking, and so we just jot those ideas down, ideas for alternative titles, stuff like that. Then what I'd like you to do in the second column is to think about the key process that you have attached to this unit. Now, most units will either be a research process or a scientific process-based unit, meaning that the students are either going through a scientific process or a research process. In some instances, it's really, really obvious. In others, you might actually be using both. And then what I'd also ask you to do is to highlight any key tools within that process. So for example, we use the research process, but to organize our thinking along the way, we use the compass model. That's really powerful and really important because we're also introducing kind of the conceptual lens of sustainable development. And then basically here, what I would like you to do is to just outline the key learning experiences and contexts. So what is the context for learning here? And then the learning experiences and knowledge base, I guess, in which you build that conceptual understanding. Okay, so we're going to avoid going into thinking about and listing the conceptual understandings here or even the concepts. We don't really want to do that because we've done that and the planners do that really, really well. I kind of want to know what it looks like, or it would be really important for us to know what the learning looks like at classroom level in each grade. Okay, so this might be what knowledge base, it says key provocations that you might have, case studies that you might use, key texts you might use, experiences such as outdoor ed experiences, or any projects or anything you might use. So this is literally, if I want to explain to maybe even a non-teacher what I'm going to be doing in class, kind of just jot down notes here. Okay, and this will help us to see basically what's underpinning those conceptual understandings. So what I'd like you to do is to pause the video now for 20-25 minutes and in a team just jot down all your ideas for each of your units throughout the year. Okay, and we're back. So now we should have kind of a map of the knowledge base and the learning experiences that are going to be going on throughout your units this year. And so what we're going to do is we're going to combine our experience and our existing knowledge. We're going to have our learning program in mind, and we're going to follow these steps here. So cast your eye over each other's units. Look at any questions that they've outlined. Can you answer them or give them any ideas? Is there any repetition that could be solved and enhanced by changing the context slightly? Have you done anything or seen anything before that might be a powerful learning experience for that grade? Okay, so this I think is really important question here, because a lot of us have taught in different grades, we've taught in different systems, we have a lot of experience, everyone at the school has lots of experience, so it'd be great to draw on that when we're looking at each other's units. I know that I look in other units that I don't teach in grade 4 and really wish I could be part of it, so kind of now is an opportunity to contribute to that. And then do you have any further questions for them, perhaps to help their thinking? Okay, so we're going to spend 15-20 minutes now going and looking at each other's, and can we just post-it note ideas and thoughts? I would have thought that most of our ideas and thoughts are going to be around powerful learning engagements, sharing of resources and ideas and things like that. But you could, if you have ideas for this, or if you have ideas for this section, that would be really helpful as well. So if you just pause the video now and spend 15-20 minutes doing that, that would be great. Okay, thank you very much. I hope this was useful for you to kind of put your thinking down on paper and hopefully sort of simplify some of the thinking when you don't have to consider the CUs too closely. Please leave your work on the tables. I'm going to collect it all in, and it will let me see very clearly if there's anything I can do to help, or if there's any coaching conversations that anyone may wish to have. Please just contact me and we can arrange a time, no problem. I will get them back to you after I've had a look at everything and taken photos and recorded them. Yeah, I hope you have a really good week, and please email me with any questions that you have from this session.